Well, hi there, students. It's Mr. V. This lesson is going to briefly explore the beginner's approach to how to draw the eye, and more specifically, the eye line. I'm not going to get too deep. We're just going to break down the parts of the eye, how they work together, and what the general proportions are, as well as how to get better at doing it at the end. Here's an example on how knowing facial anatomy translates directly into different art styles. If you know the different parts of the eye, different parts of the mouth, and different parts of the nose, and where they go on a face, it'll help you translate that information into different styles. You'll have all of that anatomy under your belt, and then you can focus on, well, what makes a certain style its style? It's important that you learn the core fundamentals. What is the eye? How does it work? And then once you have that under your belt, you'll be able to draw the eye in many different methods and many styles a lot more effectively. Down here in the bottom right, let's explore non-examples really quick. Typically, when beginners are learning how to draw the eye, they fall back on what we could consider to be symbols or icons of what the eye is. It's typically what I call football syndrome. You know, draw a football, put a circle in the middle, there you've got your eye, and then you have the little lines coming out for the eyelashes. There are parts of the eye that students need to know before attempting it, and that'll make sure that the football syndrome never happens. I teach my students that the eye has the following 9 major anatomy points for beginners. First, you have the socket. That's the hole that this globe sits inside of. You have the top lid, the outer eye, I call it, which is where the lids converge on the outside. You've got the bottom lid, and it's a lot smaller than the top lid. The highlight is a stylistic piece of the anatomy. It's the shiny part on the pupil and iris that gives the picture life and personality. You've got the pupil, that's the darkest part. You've got the iris, that's the colorful part, and it's got the streakies inside of it. You have what I call the inner eye, and that's where the eyelids taper off inside near the nasal cavity, and that's where your tear ducts are located. Lastly, you have the brow. The brow is a bony mass at the very top of the eye. It's your ridge. And on that brow would be your eyebrows and the gap in between the eyes above the nose. When you're drawing the eye, there's a couple of things to consider. The iris is generally chopped off a little bit. It's cut off by the top eyelid. However, on the bottom of the iris, you'll usually see it complete and it gently rests on the bottom eyelid. That's an eye expression at rest. But of course, if you apply different expressions of surprise or anger, it's going to alter the shape of the eye and where the iris is going to go. For example, if you're excited or happy or startled or scared, your eyes are going to be open a lot wider and you're going to see the entire iris. Everybody's different and unique, but if you follow these proportions, it's a great starting point in mastering this. Start with a center line. That's going to give the symmetry that you need to the face. And then you have 2 eyes. In general, the size of these eyes need to be as big as follows. You need to be able to fit at least 1 eye in between both of the eyes. That's how you know how large they will be on this line where the eyes rest, where they live. But Mr. V, that doesn't answer my question. How specifically big should the eyes be? Only big enough so that you could fit 1 eye or slightly more in between the 2. That's generally what we see with most people's eye proportions. Now the outside, everything past one of those eyes, should be about half of the eye in length, okay? So your eyes will be as big as half of an eye from the outside to the edge of your face, and at least 1 eye in between, maybe slightly more than that. Now you have this brow ridge. Again, those are not the eyebrows. That's the mass that is on top of your skull. That's the thing that goes down and up if you're happy or sad or angry. It forms a very gentle M-like shape. Another part about the eye line that's important is the nasal bone. This controls where the sockets begin and end, and in general, where some shadow points are going to be. So you can see in this image again, we have the brow coming, it arches up and goes over and gets a little larger in this area. The eyebrows themselves, they rest on top of this socket area. We've got this hollow mass that's generally darkened, and it allows the eyeball orb to kind of poke out of it. You draw the socket by adding a little bit of shading. Now the top lid, because it sticks outward, kind of like an umbrella, it catches light on top. It's generally going to be lighter than the socket around it. Now when you're drawing the eye, the top lid, right here where like the lashes are, okay, that line is generally pretty thick. It's pretty dark because it's turning under, away from the light. The bottom lid is not very large. It's brighter on the bottom because it's catching light, and it doesn't open and shut the same way that the top lid does. Because that bottom lid sticks out a little bit, you're going to see a little bit of shadow down here. Also because that's where the socket's located. Also, the eye is not a symmetrical football shape. Notice that the outer eye right here, where the lids converge, is slightly higher than where the inner eye rests. The inner eye is a little bit lower, and the outer eye is a little bit higher. The top lid curves pretty broadly, yet the bottom lid, it still curves, but it's a little flatter than the top one. Again, all of this is unique based on gender, ethnicity, and everybody's personal features. The eye socket's actually pretty big where the skull is, and inside this area, there's a ton of soft tissue in between the globe of the eye and all this hollow space here. There's muscles, there's fat, you got your tear ducts right over here, there's a big lump of fat over here. We're not going to go that deep. But in general, you got a very large hole with a golf ball kind of wedged into it that pokes out on the front. The iris and the pupil, they're not really that big compared to the rest of the eyeball. Here you've got the brow ridge that bulges out on the skull. Here's your nasal bone area. And if we look at the eye as a three-dimensional form, you'll see that it, with these cross contours going over here, it bulges out, sinks in, and then with the curvature of the globe, it bulges again, and then comes back out and under and sinks back in again. So here, think of the eyelids as a single sheet of flesh that are stretched across this globe, and they meet in 2 points. That's going to cause creases and wrinkles up here around where the rest of the globe sits. These creases and wrinkles, the way you could draw them if you're using shading, is to add a little bit of value around here and then have a lighter area right around here where the eyelid goes over the top of the globe. Now the eyebrows, that's a little bit different for each person. If you feel your own eyebrows, you'll notice that sometimes on some people's faces, the eyebrow actually crosses over where the socket is, and sometimes it rides along the edge of the eye socket. But you've got this large mass of the brow, and then it turns away as the head starts to turn away on the skull and narrows down over here. Unless you're a lady and you pluck your eyebrows, then yours would be a lot smaller. Do you see how the shape of the eye socket is still there? It doesn't change. The bone doesn't move around. It's the muscles that stretch all the different features around. So the eyebrows here are raised way up above where the eye socket is because the muscles are stretching the skin so that the brows go way up high. You still have the orb stuck in the same place around this general eye socket area. Now here with the angry expression, you still have a socket, and you can tell by where all the different folds and creases are. It's just all that muscle mass, fat, and soft tissue getting compressed that changes the overall shape. As a beginner, think 9 different pieces, remember the proportions, and draw from life whenever possible. A great way to start would be with a mirror, looking at your own face. Or pull up photographs of celebrities or pictures from a magazine and make sure they're large enough so that you can see all the detail. That goes for your drawings as well. Draw them large so that you can focus on all the different parts. If you draw small, you're going to have a very hard time drawing the eyes. These are samples of different student sketchbooks. You can see the amount of practice and repetition that comes into play here. When you do the eye line, you don't necessarily have to draw the nose if you haven't been trained in how to do it yet or you're uncomfortable. You could just chop the nose off right here as long as you get those nasal bones in this general region. Once you're comfortable doing many different faces, then start to do different facial expressions. Make weird faces in the mirror. Go find pictures of people looking dead at you. Focus on the differences between male, female, adult, child. There are lots of different anatomical differences there. Look at different races as well. Have fun practicing. Watch yourselves grow, and I look forward to seeing you in class. Take care.